He served his country, saw things most of us can't imagine. But when he needed a simple meal, they looked past him, ignored him, until a silent promise was remembered. Arthur walked slowly, his old army hat tilted just so. He always picked the same worn booth by the window at the Daily Grind. It was his little treat, his quiet corner of the world every Tuesday morning. He wasn't looking for anything fancy, just his usual black coffee and scrambled eggs. He sat patiently, hat in his lap, a small, faded medal pinned to his coat, barely noticeable, almost hidden. The diner buzzed with a morning rush. Young couples laughed in a nearby booth. A businessman tapped on his phone at the counter. A group of friends chatted loudly over steaming mugs. Two young servers zipped around, trays laden with plates. One glanced at Arthur, then quickly turned away, whispering to the other as they passed. "He's been there for ages. Just ignore him. He probably forgot what he ordered." The other server nodded, not even looking his way. A customer at the next table, overhearing, chuckled to his companion. "Maybe he's waiting for someone who's not coming." Arthur heard them. He didn't say a word, just straightened his back a bit, a habit from years of standing tall. His stomach rumbled faintly, but he kept his dignity. He adjusted the collar of his old coat, waited. The kitchen door swung open and shut, letting out bursts of cooking smells and loud clatter. Plates landed on other tables. Coffee poured into other mugs. People laughed. But Arthur's table remained empty. No water glass, no menu, just silence around him. He watched the steam rise from fresh pancakes at the next booth, the aroma making his hunger sharper. Still, he waited. Finally, after 20 long minutes, he slowly pushed himself up from the worn booth. He hadn't eaten, hadn't paid, because no one had come to take his order. As he passed the counter on his way out, the server who spoke earlier leaned against the register, wiping it down. She rolled her eyes slightly. "Should have spoken up, old man." Arthur simply nodded, a slight polite tilt of his head, and touched the brim of his hat. No trouble. He had learned decades ago that making a fuss solved nothing. Vietnam had taught him that sometimes silence spoke louder than shouting. So he walked out, his worn boots clicking softly on the tiled floor, heart heavy but head held high. He just wanted a meal, a moment of peace, but felt invisible instead. Outside, Arthur paused on the sidewalk. Through the diner window, he could see the waitresses laughing, serving younger customers who arrived after him. Everyone else got immediate attention. His reflection stared back from the glass. White hair, a face etched with time, eyes that had seen too much. Invisible, despite everything he'd given. He straightened his shoulders, a lifelong habit from military days. He didn't need their food. He needed what a place like this used to mean: respect, community, a place where his service mattered. He turned away, his worn boots clicking softly on the pavement. He'd walk to the park instead, maybe feed the pigeons. They, at least, seemed happy to see him. Just then, the bell above the Daily Grind door jingled. A tall man in a sharp suit stepped inside. His silver hair was neatly combed, his posture ramrod straight. The whole diner seemed to quiet as he scanned the room. Every head turned towards him, his eyes locked onto the bench across the street where Arthur sat. The man's face changed, a sudden shock. His hand slipped, and his briefcase dropped to the floor with a soft thud. "Sergeant Arthur Vance!" The man's voice carried, cutting through the diner's sudden silence, even from inside. Arthur looked up, squinting against the morning sun, then slowly stood. "General Hayes? Sir, is that really you?" "Still your junior sergeant," General Hayes said softly, but with the clear, commanding tone Arthur remembered. A confused server walked over to the general. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. The general turned to her, his gaze firm, unwavering. "Yes, you can fetch the owner, immediately." She hesitated, her eyes wide. "Why, sir?" "Because," General Hayes stated, his eyes still fixed on Arthur's quiet form across the street, a determined glint in them. I'm buying this diner. From his bench, Arthur watched the scene unfold through the diner window. General Hayes's arrival had caused quite a stir. Customers craned their necks, conversations halted mid-sentence. The same server who had ignored Arthur now scurried about with newfound energy, fetching the manager. Arthur rubbed his arthritic knuckles, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Embarrassment, certainly. He never wanted to be a cause for drama. But something else too. Recognition. After decades of fading into the background, someone had seen him. A delivery truck rumbled past, momentarily blocking his view of the diner. When it passed, he saw General Hayes gesturing animatedly inside. Even from across the street, Arthur could read the tension in his former commander's posture, the rigid shoulders, the precise movements, the authoritative stance that had once commanded respect from an entire battalion. Two teenagers stopped near Arthur's bench, typing on their phones. Something's happening at the daily grind, one said to the other. Some big shot in a suit is causing a scene. Probably just another entitled businessman, her friend replied with a shrug. If only they knew, Arthur thought. If only they understood who Richard Hayes really was. The man who had led 50 soldiers through a treacherous jungle ambush without losing a single one. The officer who had carried a wounded private 3 miles to safety. The leader who remembered every name, every birthday, every family detail of the men who served under him. A police cruiser pulled up to the diner, lights off but clearly responding to some sort of call. The officer stepped out, straightened his uniform, and entered the daily grind. More commotion was visible through the windows. Arthur considered leaving. This wasn't what he wanted. He'd only come for coffee and maybe some scrambled eggs, not whatever this was becoming. But before he could rise from the bench, the diner door flew open. General Hayes emerged, scanning the street until his eyes locked with Arthur's. With determined strides, he crossed the street, ignoring a honking car that had to brake suddenly. "Arthur Vance," he said, his voice carrying the same commanding tone Arthur remembered from over 40 years ago. "Why are you sitting out here in the cold?" Arthur stood, military habit taking over. "No reason, sir." "No reason?" Hayes raised an eyebrow. "I saw what happened in there." "It's nothing," Arthur said softly. "I'm used to it." "Well, I'm not," Hayes replied, his jaw tightening. "And neither should you be." He extended his hand, not for a handshake, but gesturing toward the diner. "Walk back in with me, Sergeant. There are some people who need a lesson in respect." Arthur hesitated. "Sir, I don't want to cause trouble." General Hayes smiled for the first time. "You're not causing trouble, Arthur. You're fixing it, just like you always did." Inside the daily grind, the owner stood speechless as General Hayes declared his intention to buy the diner. "You're joking, right?" the manager asked, half laughing, his face pale. "Not at all," General Hayes replied, his voice firm. "Get the deed. Name your price. This was a family business, you muttered. And now it will be a place that respects family, especially the kind that wore a uniform." Arthur stood to the side, unsure what was truly happening. "Why would you do this, sir?" he asked softly. Hayes stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Because you taught me to never leave a man behind, and that includes in diners." The staff stared, mouths open. The server who ignored Arthur turned even paler, her eyes wide with shock. "I didn't know who he was," she whispered, almost to herself. Hayes turned to her, his voice clear and strong. "You don't need to know someone's rank to treat them with decency." A reporter from the local news station arrived, having heard whispers on her police scanner. Within an hour, the story broke. Veteran ignored at diner, former commander buys it outright. The story went national by nightfall, spreading like wildfire across social media. That evening, Arthur sat quietly back at his usual booth. This time, it wasn't empty. Veterans stopped by. Some saluted, some cried, sharing their own stories. A group of young soldiers asked to shake his hand, their faces full of awe. One teenager walked in, shyly handed Arthur a crayon drawing of an American flag. "Thank you for serving," he said, then quickly walked away. General Hayes returned the next morning with paperwork. The sale had gone through. The diner was officially renamed Arthur's Table. A beautiful wooden plaque now hung proudly by the door. Every hero deserves more than a seat. They deserve a legacy. The afternoon sun slanted through the newly cleaned windows as Arthur observed the transformation happening around him. The diner buzzed with activity, workmen installing new signs, staff being trained with a new sense of purpose, veterans of all ages coming through the doors to see if the incredible story they had heard was true. General Hayes moved through the space with purpose, pointing out changes he wanted made. "The coffee station goes there," he directed, "and I want photographs, real ones, from every conflict, Korea to Afghanistan. No stock images." A young waitress, not the one who had ignored him, approached Arthur's table with a fresh cup of coffee. "On the house, sir," she said, her eyes respectful and sincere. "And I'm so sorry about before." Arthur nodded, accepting both the coffee and the apology with quiet dignity. "No need to apologize, you weren't even here." "I know," she replied, a slight tremor in her voice. "But someone should say it." Arthur's story isn't just about a diner. It's about seeing those who served. If you believe quiet heroes deserve more than just a thank you, if you believe every veteran deserves a place at the table, then subscribe to Quiet Soldier Stories and join our mission to remember them all.